Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Jay Forgione, who's the owner of Summit Retirement Solutions. Jay, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, doing really good. I'm excited to talk to you and learn how you serve your clients. But before we dive into what sets you apart from traditional wealth management firms, give us a little bit of your story and background, and how did you get started into the financial services industry?
So I got into the financial services industry actually kind of by accident. I've always been interested in that arena in my life, but went through a career change in 2008 when the world was imploding, and
I remember that.
found an area I could really help people. And I got into it. Like I said, I was recently released from a position that I wasn't expecting, and had another buddy who was in the business who kind of brought me in, and we started working together, doing some financial planning. And as I kept going, the area that I found where most people fell short or needed the most help was in retirement planning. There's just a lot of facets and a lot of different parts that go together to, other than just like wealth management. So I really started to lean that direction, and then decided to go independent about 15 years ago and never looked back.
Yeah, I really like how, an event that was really widespread, the economic crisis of '07, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, how that drug out, caused you to pivot. You didn't go, work at Home Depot. You went and got into financial services, which was similar to that. And then you noticed that need. So I think that probably back in that time when you got started, you probably did not have the lay of the land as well as you do now. So what are some of those things that you learned in the beginning years as it relates to when you're working with people and they just think that, oh, I just have some wealth, I need you to management. That's the traditional wealth management. But then you started really dialing that into becoming into your own. What were some of those things that you noticed?
So, when we look at it, there's several areas, when I look at retirement planning. When I look at wealth management, I kind of look at it as like a 2D puzzle. There's some aspects there that you have to look at. How much time do they have before they need the money? How is wealth diversified? But there's not a lot to it, and most people kind of get that concept. What they start to miss out on is it gets very complex as far as, when I go to retire, the questions you always get: when do I take Social Security? What do I do with my pension? There's certain things that they don't think about, like tax, like what are taxes going to look like? Retirement's changed considerably over the years from my grandparents' generation to my parents' generation. My grandparents' time, there wasn't a lot of inflation, so they didn't really invest in the market, and they didn't live very long. My parents' generation all had pensions, so it's a different way of doing things. And the baby boomers are in the 401k generation, which starts to throw in some other areas where you have to think about tax, because everything's tax deferred. So we kind of narrowed it down to 5 areas that we look at, and the name of the company is Summit, and we kind of go with the the word trail to talk about taxes, retirement income, asset management, insurance hedge, and legacy, because all the problems that we seem to find all kind of fit into those categories. There's so many things that you can go wrong or you may not be aware of. But usually when I start getting into it, people don't understand how Social Security is taxed. And the fact that they're going to pull money out of their 401k creates this like tax torpedo on top of that to make their Social Security taxable. So there's all these little avenues that they're just not aware of that we start to bring up. And, the way I look at financial advisors, it's sort of like, to me, it's like saying doctor. Okay, you're a doctor. Are you a brain surgeon? Are you a pediatrician? Are you a generalist? Like, what are you? So again, when you talk to people and you say financial advisor, for doctors, not all doctors do surgery. Well, not all financial advisors do retirement planning.
Interesting, because a traditional wealth management firm, and this is just, I'm not an expert in the industry at all, but it makes me think, I have X number of dollars, please help me manage it well. And they'll go, well, let's put it into this sector, that sector, and let's be careful and look at it every year and see you next year. Well, that's just managing one aspect. Whereas like you mentioned, you're getting into things like, well, that's all fine and good, but now what about tax? What about, things like that? So is there anything deeper that people need to realize about what a traditional wealth management firm does or doesn't do?
So, the thing is, again, if you have a wealth manager that you're dealing with, that you're comfortable with, most people, no one wants to get divorced. They feel comfortable in that spot, and that person has helped them. But I say that typically you go through phases when you're planning or building your retirement. So in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you're accumulating. You need you need a wealth manager. You need a financial advisor, somebody to help you. Like, what investments should I be putting my money into? How should I be diversified? That's when you're using that type of a person. Typically, most of them, that's what they do, is they manage money. So they're not necessarily going to tell you when it's time to take Social Security. If you ask them the question, they'll probably give you some answer. But most firms are just interested in, how is it balanced? How are your assets balanced? So as you get older, they make the portfolio more conservative. That's the plan. And that's not really a retirement plan. That's just an investment plan. As I get older, I need to conserve this money. So I look at, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you're in what's called the accumulation phase, where you're building, and you tend to be more aggressive. You tend to, you're trying to build wealth. And then when you start getting into your 50s, 60s, you get into what we call the preservation phase. I'm getting ready to retire. I've now built the nest egg. How do I need to shift gears. I can't just put it all in the bank. It still needs to continue to grow, but I need to start preserving some of this. I can't just keep gambling with all of it. And then you get into what we call the decumulation, or the spend down phase of it, which again has a whole new set of rules. So when you're in the accumulation, most wealth managers will tell you, when the market crashes, just keep your foot on the gas. Well, it's true, because you don't need the money for 10, 15, 20 years. So that is accurate. But you can't do that if you knew, I use the example all the time. We do a lot of educational workshops, and I use the example all the time. Does anybody know somebody who retired in 2007? And, I get a show of hands, and then I say, what were they doing in 2008 if they weren't shifting gears ahead of time? And they all chuckle and laugh and say, yeah, they probably were going back, finding a job, or going to work at Walmart or whatever, because half their assets went out the window. So, I think a traditional firm will help you, kind of mitigate that problem. But then when you're in the decumulation phase, there's a whole new set of rules, because most people I meet have a junk drawer full of accounts. I've got an IRA. I've got an old 401k from here. I've got a Roth. I've got some money I inherited. And then it's a matter of like, well, which one of those do you spend first? Which one of those do you, does it matter? Does it matter? It does matter, because from a taxation perspective, or just from, the sort of the most economical way to do it, it matters which one of those accounts you have invested more aggressively. So it's just not the investment part of it, but when I go to spend it, what's the spend plan? I ask most people, okay, you're going to retire. And I say, how much do you need? And they kind of roll their eyes around and say, I don't know. I think and then husband and wife look at each other and say, I don't know. What do you think? And there's sort of like no plan there. So
it's like you could tell that was the first time they've been thinking about that even.
Yeah. So what they constantly do is say, they think of the total nest egg, and they say, I have X amount of dollars. Is that enough? I have no idea. What's your plan?
Yeah.
Are you going to buy 3 Ferraris and a Porsche, or are you going to, hiking?
Are you going to travel the world every month? Well, or are you going to sit tight so there is no right answer to every single person. So it really does all depend. The thing that's intriguing me, Jay, is the word decumulation, because I know that people like, I'm going to accumulate money, But then when you get to the certain phase and age where you start going decumulation, and I like that word picture, that you said, all the accounts in the drawer, like, oh, here's this account and this account and this account. Well, which one do you start using? Because I also know that there are times and ages where you are required to pull money out. And which account do you
Correct.
pull it out of first, or do you just pull it out of one and think you're good to go? You might have to be making withdrawals and required distributions out of several. So that kind of ties into that decumulation, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I think people don't really take into consideration some of the things like most of that money. So they usually have money that is taxable from capital gains, which would be, traditional investments. Maybe it's not retirement money, just some brokerage money that they have. That's taxed one way. Then everybody's got a 401k or IRA money. That's taxed as ordinary income. But what's the tax? Everybody assumes it was sold to us that you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire.
Yeah.
Well, 401ks came out in 1978, 1980, and at that time, tax brackets were significantly higher. So at that time, it was true. Right now, tax brackets are some of the lowest they've been in history, and we're in the most debt we've ever been in. So, you're at what we call legislative risk, where the government can change the rules when they want to change the rules. You're going into retirement with $1 million in your 401k, assuming you're going to get taxed at 18%. Well, what if you're taxed at 50%? Which is possible. In 1944, the highest tax bracket in the country was 92%. Middle income tax bracket was 50. So, is it going to go back there overnight? No. But these are the things that you have to plot out and look and say, as I draw this money down, where am I taking it from? What's the most powerful? When I say that, I mean, from a tax perspective, like Roth money, the taxes are done. So
yep,
that is the money you want to grow aggressively and let that pile grow. You don't want to tap that one first. So there's all these rules and regulations and the right way to do it. You could go in and haphazardly try it yourself, but you literally could save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars by not even buying a different product or anything like that. It's just following the proper flow. And that's again where a retirement planner is going to be different than, a traditional wealth manager, which if you ask the questions to a wealth manager, they might understand it. Same way if you ask a brain surgeon about how do I remedy a cold, they're probably like, well, I'm a doctor, so I've got background in it, but
yeah,
they're not the
and
guy
vice versa. The general practitioner had one semester of whatever, podiatry, but
right.
They're not the expert like a podiatrist would be.
Right. Correct. So,
you mentioned asset management as the A in your trail methodology. How does that factor into when you are like making those shifts from those phases? Because accumulation phase, you're going to manage assets maybe a little bit more aggressively depending on the age. And then you start getting into another age of age 50, 60 kind of thing where you're like, let's start circling the wagons. So talk a little bit about how you're advising your clients to manage their assets properly.
So we kind of take an approach this way where I look at it in this trail, like I said, where we look at tax, we look at retirement income, we look at asset management, all kind of weave together. Because if you have a plan for the first two, that helps you with the asset management. So if you have a plan for the tax, how I'm going to take what accounts from, and if you have a plan for where is the retirement income going to come from, some of it's going to come from Social Security. If you have a pension, again, so we use this I call it bucket strategy. We have sort of three buckets, and I color them like a traffic light. Red, emergency money, don't touch it. That's just going to be the water heater breaks. Then I've got the green bucket, which is touch all the time. That's the paycheck. So in retirement, it's not about how big the nest egg is. It's what does that paycheck need to look like? So when I'm trying to determine where's the money going to come from, that starts to determine what the asset management plan is going to look like. So again, if I can leverage more of their money into a product that's going to pay on a regular basis, like if they've got a significant pension, or maybe if they wanted to use an annuity type of a plan, then that allows me to showing them that I got the basics covered. No matter what, come hell or high water, no matter what the market does, I've got this money coming in. It's going to be covered by inflation. I don't care what the market does. I'm going to have this paycheck. It's going to cover my basic needs. It's not going to cover fancy trips and things like that. But then that allows me to then take the rest of the money and invest it aggressively like when I was 20 or 30. Because the reason why you can't invest like in your 60s like you were 20 and 30 is I need the money right now. But if we start to carve out what we're going to use and put that into a plan, then that tells me what's left that I can go ahead and put the foot on the gas.
The word plan is making me think of the difference between reacting to something or responding to something. Reacting is last minute, like, ooh, this happened. Let's fix this, put out this fire. Responding is like, okay, we've had this plan put into place. We knew this could happen. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to work the problem with this plan. And so that whole, concept we're talking about here, the retirement planner, you've got this plan and you're saying, okay, during these ages, you have plenty of runway before retirement. So we can handle a little bit more volatility, maybe, or risk. But now we need to start moving into this phase. And so I like that whole feeling of the plan. Talk a little bit about that I in the trail methodology, the insurance hedge. How does that factor in?
Yeah. So we look at insurance, and some people don't like insurance because usually they think of insurance as a cost. But to me, again, we focus everything around like summit, hiking, mountain climbing. And again, it's about tools. So if you were going to go climb Mount Everest, you would make sure you've got the right tools to go up and to come down because they're going to be used differently. You might have a rope that you use one way when you're climbing up, and you might use it differently when you're coming down. You're going to rappel as opposed to, linking it and climbing up. So again, some of these insurance products, why is the insurance industry so big? Because they're letting you hedge more of their money and less of your money. And I'll give you an example. Some people don't like annuities for different reasons. And I said, most of the time can't explain to me why you don't like it, but the biggest reason is somebody somewhere didn't use it properly. So again, it's about the tool and how it's used. So when insurance is used properly, is going to give you a much far better hedge. For instance, if I had, $1 million, the rule of thumb is you shouldn't draw more than 4% in retirement, because if you want the pile to last, you're hoping that you're getting a return of 5 or 6, so that you're pretty much living off the interest. Well, if I could carve out, and if I needed $40,000, I would need about $1 million to do it. Well, if I could carve out, say, 300,000 or 400,000, put it into annuity and generate the 40,000 for the rest of my life, that hedge of not having to worry about the remaining 600, because that is going to guarantee me a payout. So again, even things like long-term care, people don't like long-term care, and the traditional style policies aren't even really around anymore. They're more hybrid policies, but all it's doing is hedging for an event where if I need long-term care, which 70% of people are going to need some kind of assistance, and it's not cheap. I had an aunt that needed assistance and an uncle. They went in to a home. One had Alzheimer's, one had cancer, and 3 years later, they had $500,000 less in their estate, and their kids didn't get that money. So would you rather pay dollar for dollar $500,000, or would you rather put $100,000 away and let an insurance company take the hedge and pay the rest? Yeah. So again, it's how the tools are used. People look at that and say, well, what if it doesn't happen to me? Again, with long-term care, the new policies out there, what people didn't like about it is you die and you get nothing if you didn't use it. The new ones, you basically get your money back. So it's about reallocating the asset.
Yeah, that's a good feeling, because I've heard that from the old policies. It's kind of like, oh, well, your car insurance, you paid all year, you didn't have a wreck, so you're not going to get that money back either. Well, with these new hybrid policies, if you didn't need the long-term care, those funds are still sitting there growing, doing whatever it was intended to do, but it's there if you need it.
Yeah, I look at it as more of like a reallocation of the asset, because some people say, well, I'll just pay for it when I get there. Okay, so you're going to self-insure. Are you going to self-insure dollar for dollar, or would you like to do it at a discount? What do you mean by that? Okay, well, you could park 100,000. That if you were going to self-insure, you need to park 100,000 somewhere at least for this event. That's probably going to cost you 300 or 400. But do you want to park 300 or 400, or park 100 that will take care of the problem? It's just again, it's using the tools the right way. So when we look at insurance, some people don't don't have a need for different insurance products. And depending on what's going on in your state, how you leverage certain kinds of life insurance, how you leverage certain kinds of annuities or long-term care, which some people, like, again, the problem is you Google that stuff and you'll get the devil. Some people say this is bad or that's bad. But to me, again, it's if you can just take 2 seconds to listen to an explanation, a true retirement planner, all these things fit. Asset management and how you invest. You should have an investment strategy. You should have an insurance strategy. You should have a legacy strategy and a written retirement income plan. So kind of like you were saying before, there's most people I meet, when I ask them what's the plan, they sort of close one eye, hold their thumb up and hold it in the air and say, it's kind of going to look like, I think it's going to look like this. And I'm like, wouldn't you rather see year by year stepped out? The money for this year is going to come from here. The money from next year is going to come from here. It's going to be there because of how we have it set up. So you sleep at night, because I'm not sitting there wondering, I hope that's going to work. And then it's just a matter of tweaking. Hey, this came up and we weren't expecting it. No problem. We'll just make some changes. Leave some room for, change.
100%. Well, I tell you, Jay, this has been really helpful to really get that clear picture of what a retirement planner does versus a traditional wealth management firm. If someone is interested in learning more about what you guys are doing, what's the best way they can do that and reach out and connect with you?
Sure. You can go out and check out our website. It's www.summit, SUMMIT, and then a hyphen, and then R like Richard, S like Sam, which stands for Retirement Solutions. So www.summit-rs.com. And on there, you can see if you wanted to talk to us further about some of these things I'm talking about, you can schedule a visit. We have a cool thing on there that says, what's your retirement tax bill going to look like in retirement? So meaning like, what do I look like going to be paying for taxes? You can attend some of our events. We do tons of educational events all around the area. So that's probably the best way, or you can even just give us a call. Our phone number is 860-269-0909. And we're here to help.
Awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.